Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Sarah and today we're going to work on this table. Now I got it looking like this. It looks like somebody tried to sand it or something and refinish it. It's in pretty great shape as far as structurally. The legs and base of the table don't need anything done. So I'm just going to tackle this top. I'm going to give it a quick, good cleaning. I guess not quick, a thorough cleaning. I want to get all the grease and grime off so that when I go to sand, I'm not sanding anything into the wood. This does have 2 leaves, so I'm going to clean those up because those also need stripped and stained. Now, the challenge that's going to be with this piece is I'm not stripping all of it. So the tabletop, I will need to figure out how to match the stain of the legs. And also, as we go along, or towards the end of the video, I will point out a big bummer in this flip. I learned some lessons along the way, and I don't know that I did anything wrong, but maybe I did, and we'll talk about that at the end. So keep watching and see how this baby turns out. After wiping it down with Simple Green, I just took a wet towel and wiped all the areas off to get as much of the cleaning solution off as I could. And then we're off to sanding. This probably took the most amount of time. I started with a 100 grit sandpaper and just tore into it. And I don't think I've ever used sandpaper like this before. And, from what you guys see, it looks like it goes fast because I'm speeding it up. But actually, it took a good amount of time. Like I said, this took the most amount of time. Now, I did take my orbital sander and sand the edges. And the risk you take when doing this is, because this doesn't form to the curves like if you had a surf prep sander, which I don't have. I just have this orbital sander or my handy dandy hands and do it by hand. But you just have to be very careful that you don't destroy the edges on these curves like this when sanding. So I just went quickly and gently and tried to carefully sand all the little details of the edges because honestly, I didn't want to sand it by hand. Then I have 2 leaves with this table, so I had to sand both of those down. I've been taking my time in completing this table. When I started filming this, it was late September, early October, and the leaves were beautiful. The weather was beautiful. It was just so nice to be outside working on this and thankful to get to take advantage of the nice weather. Now, once I had everything sanded with the 100 grit sandpaper to take off the finish and the stain, I wiped everything down with a damp cloth. And then I still need to sand 2 more times. So one more time with, I think I used 150. Usually I use 180. So it was one of those 2 grit sandpaper. And then I wiped it off and went again with a 220 grit sandpaper. From my understanding, when you are staining, you do not want to go any higher than at 220 when you're using a penetrating stain, if I remember that correct. Because any more fine of a sanding will cause your stain to not penetrate. It like creates a too smooth of a barrier to get through, I guess. So I stop at 220. And now that I've got all the finish off, I see that there's a little bit of staining on the top of this table, and it's not bad. And I have oxalic acid from that desk flip that I did with the Ugly Duckling challenge, so I pulled that out and put that on. And when you do that, you first put it on the stained area, and then you need to do the rest of the table because it bleaches the wood essentially, and you want to bleach evenly so that you don't just have this white bleach spot. And after one go around, it looks better. And then you need to wipe it with water. And then I actually did do this a second time. Now to the challenging part, trying to match the stain from the legs of the table so that I can make the tabletop match. Now, I am trying mahogany first because part of the wood under the table kind of looks like a deeper red, but maybe wiped off quickly. And So I tried that. I felt like that was a little too deep. So I pulled out my golden pecan to try to go something a little lighter. And once those dried for a little bit, I held them up to the table leg. And yeah, no, neither one is right. Definitely not the mahogany. The golden pecan is close. So I headed to the hardware store. I took a picture of the leg because I didn't want to bring the whole thing in with me. And the picture actually matches the red mahogany. I'd actually been at the hardware store, decided it matched red mahogany. I had red mahogany, so I didn't buy anything, but it didn't match. So coming back to the store, I decided that antique walnut actually looks better. So I went with that one. Now, when I went to look for the antique walnut, they only had the stain with the polyurethane mixed in. I'd never used it. It was the only choice, though, so I bought it. And we will see how this turns out. Now, if you're curious, this is the side of one of the leaves, so I'm not concerned about this mix-match stain. I'm just going to stain over it and hope for the best. Now, I'll try another little section because I don't want to go full bore until I know for sure this stain color is going to be a good match. And to try to bring in the test spots I already did, I'm going to stain over that too and see if it helps. And let that dry and see how it looks. Now, holding it up to the table, you can see where I did the mahogany. You know, no, we're not touching that. But the golden pecan with the American walnut or antique walnut over top looks really good. Way better than just the antique walnut by itself. So I think that's golden, and I was just super excited because I was like, Lord, I even prayed, like, Lord, please help me match this because I felt like it's a challenge to match wood stains. I was even talking to a Lowe's guy, and he was like, yeah, good luck. So I was really excited about this, so I felt comfortable to do a layer of golden pecan, which I think I had just enough in the can to do one layer on everything of that stain. And after getting one layer of golden pecan on there, letting it dry, wiping off any excess, and making sure it's all nice and even and smooth, I could then come back and do a American or antique walnut on top of that. I am using a 220 grit sandpaper to lightly sand off any nicks or bubbles or anything that's just sticking up and stopping it from being smooth. And once I do that, I will wipe it with a damp towel again. A lot of repetitive process in furniture flipping of wiping and sanding and wiping and wiping and sanding. Anyway, so once I'm satisfied with how smooth it is, I'm trying this poly/stain mix I've never used. I opted to use a foam brush because I feel like I've seen other people say in videos that if you use a brush, it leaves bubbles. But now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I had it backwards. I don't know. I'm using a foam brush because that's what I had. And I feel like once it dried, the bubbling smoothed out pretty good. Now, this is tricky because you got to keep it stirred because you want the poly and the stain to all be mixed in so you don't have bare spots. And I'm wondering if, in the end, I messed up with keeping it stirred or something because, spoiler alert, after I got 2 of these coats of this poly stain on, I had spots that did not take stain. And my thought is I could have not washed off all the oxalic acid, because that's kind of grainy. When I was washing it off, maybe I left some of that on. I don't know. Maybe my stain wasn't fully mixed. I don't know. But I had little spots that did not stain. And my goodness, my honest opinion on this stain/poly, it was a little rough to work with because you saw how easily I wiped on with a rag the stain. You just wipe it on and make sure it's all even. With this, you have to stain evenly and poly evenly. And my understanding is to get a good poly texture, you don't want to go over things over and over. So you need to put it on and go one time over it and then leave it. And touch up is kind of hit or miss, and you just want to be very careful. So I felt like this was a lot of work. overall, it did mostly good coverage. I don't know if it was a user error that caused the spots. I don't know. Also, you can see here in this footage, with one coat is very splotchy. So I definitely needed to do a second coat, which of course I sanded with a 220 grit sandpaper, did a light sanding. I think the instructions said to do like a 00 or super fine steel wool. I don't have that, so I just used gently sanded with my 220 sandpaper. And then, of course, wiped it off. And then I went in for coverage number 2, which this little can had enough to do 2 coats on the table and both leaves. Like I had just a little bit left over when I was done. So if you do something like this and think you'll want more than 2 coats, get a bigger can. But I didn't know if I'd like it. And honestly, I don't think I would buy it again. I prefer to have the poly and the gel separate. Here it is, all finished, second coat, and it's just sitting up, which it looks like it's high gloss, but it's really not. I think I got satin finish. But I wasn't satisfied with the finish. It was still a little splotchy, so I got out my wipe-on poly. I first sanded, but I don't think I filmed that. So I put another layer of my wipe-on poly to see if I could even out some of the spots that didn't really fully, I don't know, it just didn't have a nice clean finish on top. It was still a little rough. So I did that. Once that dried, I came back, and here you can see these spots. It's just, it's not super terrible. From far away, you can't see it. If I didn't point it out, you probably wouldn't notice. But it just looks like it didn't stain. So that was a bummer, but I was going to probably keep this. I'm not totally sure. So if I'm not selling it, I don't have to fix it. I'm thinking if I was going to sell it, I couldn't sell it like this. I'd have to redo it, and I'm not doing that. So I cleaned it up. I realized I never wiped the legs and the sides, like underneath the table, before doing the final reveal. So I cleaned it up, and I moved this sucker outside to do the final reveal, but I decided I was not satisfied with this finish. It was not good enough, and I didn't want to do another wipe-on poly layer because it's just so thin because you're wiping it on. So before I show you the final reveal, which is at this point when I film the final reveal, it's not going to look any different from you. I did go and get my Minwax. I used this on one of my other tables, I think. So it's just a clear satin finish. And I, again, have my little foam brush, and I put a nice old thick layer on. Maybe too thick. I don't know. I mean, look at this. This can's a few years old. And so I don't know that you're supposed to use this stuff that old, but it's what I have, and I'm not going to go buy more. It's like $25 for something this size. So anyway, again, this is more difficult to put on because you need to do the quick layer. You need to be careful and not go over it a lot. You need to get an even layer. That wipe-on poly, man, I think I'm sold on the wipe-on poly. But again, it does a really thin coat, and I was going to have to do multiple coats. With this, I can just do a nice blast out, and I was just really trying to fill those pores and stuff, and to see if this would help cover the spots that didn't take. That it's just, I don't know. I think this is probably how projects go, right? You have an idea and you go for it, and things kind of throw you curveballs at time, and you just work with it. So once that final layer of poly dried, here is how those spots, those bare spots look. And I mean, they helped a little bit blend them in, but they're still there if I point them out. From far away, they're not that noticeable, so it's fine. It's definitely better than it was. So we're going to go with it. This is now finished. I was going to film a new footage for doing like a final reveal on this, but then this morning when I was going to do that, it was snowing. So the lighting was dreary, so I wasn't going to try to do this is amazing footage thing. So here is the old footage. with the camera, this doesn't look any different than if I did shoot new footage today. So this will work. It shows you the overall table and how much better it looks. I mean, I love the style of this. I think it's a beautiful table. I just need to find chairs that go with it now, and then I can bring it into my house and enjoy it for years to come. Now, just a reminder, here's what I started with, and here's what we're working with now. And I know this isn't super dramatic of a transformation, but if you have a tabletop that needs refinished, hopefully this has inspired you to tackle that tabletop and try different things to get your stains to match so that you can have a beautiful table again. So thank you for watching my video today. I hope it has helped and you have enjoyed it, and I will catch you in the next video.